The orbital station of Valara Prime hung above the trade world like a jeweled crown. Its walls glowed with silver light, and its vast docking bays welcomed ships from every corner of the galaxy. Merchants, soldiers, and nobles all mingled within its long corridors. For most, it was a place of deals and diplomacy. For Ethan Cross, it was only a refueling stop on his long journey home. Ethan was an engineer from Earth. He had been traveling for months, fixing star freighters and trading his skills for passage. Humanity was still a small voice in the galactic stage, not yet part of the great alliances or empires. Most aliens who noticed humans at all dismissed them as unimportant. Ethan had grown used to being ignored. But that day, everything changed. Ethan walked through one of the crowded markets on the station. Stalls lined the long hall filled with glowing crystals, strange weapons, and food that smelled both delicious and dangerous. His sharp eyes scanned the stalls for a spare component he needed. A coolant pump, simple, cheap, and probably forgotten by most traders. While he searched, he noticed movement ahead. Guards in bright armor were clearing the path, their staffs glowing with power. Behind them came a figure dressed in flowing violet robes, surrounded by attendants. Her face was delicate, her skin faintly glowing with golden markings, and her eyes carried the soft shimmer of starlight. Even without knowing her name, Ethan could tell she was someone important. The market suddenly grew quiet as the crowd recognized her. Whispers ran through the hall. The Heiress, Princess Lysra Veyra, the daughter of the queen herself. Ethan had heard of the Veyran Empire, though only in passing. It was vast and ancient, ruled by Queen Serenia, said to be one of the most cunning leaders in the galaxy, and this must be her daughter. Ethan stepped aside like everyone else, not wanting attention. But as Lysra passed, he saw something the others missed. In the crowd, 3 figures moved against the flow. Their eyes were locked on the princess. Their hands slipped beneath their cloaks, where weapons surely waited. Ethan's stomach tightened. He had seen men move like that before, pirates, mercenaries, killers. No one else noticed, not even the guards. The assassins were close. Too close. And then it happened. A flash of steel shimmered in the crowd. One assassin leapt forward, blade aimed for Lysra's heart. The guards were too far. The attendant screamed. Ethan didn't think. His body moved before his mind did. He lunged forward, shoving Lysra aside just as the blade came down. The strike missed her chest and slashed across Ethan's arm instead. Pain burned through him, but he held his ground. The second assassin drew a plasma pistol, aiming straight at the Heiress. Ethan grabbed a nearby stall support pole and swung it like a bat. The pistol fired, searing past Lysra's shoulder, but Ethan's strike knocked the weapon out of the assassin's hand. The third attacker rushed in with a curved blade. Ethan grabbed the arm of the nearest guard, pulling him forward to intercept. The guard finally reacted, blocking the strike, but it was Ethan's shove that saved him. Now the crowd erupted in panic. People screamed and scattered. The assassins realized their surprise had failed. One of them shouted something in a harsh alien tongue before throwing a smoke charge. The market filled with gray haze. When it cleared, the attackers were gone. Ethan stood panting, blood dripping from his arm. His hand still clutched the broken stall pole. The guards finally surrounded Lysra, weapons raised, but it was clear they had been too slow. Lysra's eyes, wide with shock, locked on Ethan. You saved me." Ethan shook his head, grimacing at the pain. "Just happened to be in the way." The lead guard stepped forward, glaring at him. "Human, what trick is this? You appear from nowhere, then the princess is attacked. Explain yourself." "I don't have time for your games," Ethan said firmly. Those assassins were ready to kill her. Hugh didn't even see them. The guard's face twisted with anger, but Lysra lifted her hand. "Enough, he speaks truth." I felt the blade that would have struck me. Without him, she paused, her voice unsteady. Without him, I would be dead. The guards exchanged uneasy glances. To question her word would be dangerous. Lysra stepped closer to Ethan. She reached out, touching his injured arm gently. Her fingers glowed faintly as if sensing the pain. "You are hurt." "It's nothing," Ethan said. "I've had worse." But already attendants were rushing forward, wrapping his arm with a glowing bandage. The guards formed a circle around them, pushing back the curious crowd. Lysra straightened her posture. Her voice became sharp and commanding, the voice of royalty. "Bring him to the palace. He is under my protection now." The guard stiffened. "Princess, he is only a human." "I said he is under my protection." she repeated, her eyes flashing. Do you dare disobey me? The guards bowed their heads at once. As you command. Ethan barely had time to process what had happened. One moment he was searching for a coolant pump. The next he was bleeding, surrounded by royal guards and walking beside an alien princess. As they moved through the station, whispers followed them. The human saved her. A common human protecting the bloodline. This will reach the queen. Ethan felt the weight of their stares. He had never wanted attention. He was just an engineer, a drifter who fixed ships to survive. But now, somehow, he was tied to royalty. Lysera walked beside him, her expression calm, though her hands trembled slightly. She glanced at him once more. You risked your life for me, stranger. What is your name? Ethan Cross, he said. Ethan Cross, she repeated softly, as if testing the sound. Remember this. You are no longer invisible. The queen will know your name. Ethan didn't know if that was a promise or a warning. All he knew was that his life had just changed forever. That night, across the station, rumors spread faster than light. They spoke of assassins, of a human stepping into danger, of the heiress saved by someone no one expected. By morning, the tale had already reached the ears of the queen herself, and Ethan Cross, who once believed humanity was ignored by the galaxy, was about to learn how wrong he. The palace of Queen Sirenia Vera rose like a mountain of crystal and steel above the capital city of Valara Prime. Its spires gleamed under the twin suns, and the walls reflected light in a way that made the whole structure seem alive. Inside, corridors stretched like rivers of silver, and rooms shimmered with alien technology. For most, the palace was a place of awe and fear. For Ethan Cross, it was suddenly his world, whether he wanted it or not. He had been escorted there under Lysera's strict protection. The palace guards moved silently around him, weapons glowing faintly, eyes alert for any sign of danger. Ethan's arm throbbed from the wound he had received in the market, but he barely noticed. His mind was racing, wondering what would happen next. Humans were outsiders here. Most alien nobles considered them unworthy of respect or trust. And yet, here he was, walking beside the very heiress of one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. Lysera walked ahead, her robes flowing gracefully with each step. She didn't glance back much, but Ethan noticed the subtle tension in her posture. Even princesses had fears, it seemed, though few would ever admit them. They're going to question you, she said quietly, not turning her head. Her voice was calm, almost soft, but carried the authority of someone used to being obeyed. The palace is full of people who will not understand why you acted as you did. They may see you as a threat, Ethan frowned. A threat? I'm just a human trying not to get shot. Lysera's lips curved into a faint smile. And yet you saved me. That counts for more than you think. Here, courage is rare. And humans are unpredictable, he shrugged. I don't plan to be unpredictable. His words faltered. He realized he didn't know what to say. How could he explain that he acted out of instinct, not strategy or loyalty to royalty? The two of them entered a grand hall, the floor polished to reflect the soaring ceilings. Alien banners hung on the walls showing the symbols of the Varen Empire, ancient and proud. Servants bowed as they passed. Guards stepped aside, and yet whispers ran like tiny currents through the hall. Who is this human? He is not supposed to be here. Does the princess always bring strangers? Ethan felt their eyes on him. He kept his head high, though he felt every one of their stares like a weight pressing down. Humans were rare enough in these halls, and no human had ever earned the right to stand beside a royal. They stopped before a set of tall doors made of polished silver and crystal. Lysera tapped a small glowing emblem embedded in the door. A soft hum resonated through the floor as the doors opened, revealing a vast audience chamber. At the far end, sitting on a raised dais, was Queen Sirenia herself. She looked older than her daughter, but carried the same aura of power. Her hair, streaked with silver, flowed around her shoulders like liquid metal, her eyes sharp and calculating, fixed on Ethan as soon as he entered. Princess Lysera, the queen said, her voice calm but strong enough to carry through the hall. You return with a human. Lysera stepped forward. Mother, he saved me from assassins. I insist he be brought to the palace for questioning and for protection. The queen's eyes narrowed slightly. She studied Ethan with quiet intensity. And what do you say, human? Ethan swallowed, feeling the weight of 1,000 curious and judgmental eyes upon him. I I didn't save her for reward. I didn't even think. I just saw someone in danger and acted. Serenya's lips curved into a thin, almost amused line. The palace of Queen Serenya was beautiful, but it was also a place of hidden dangers. Long corridors, shining floors, and glowing walls could not hide the sharp eyes of those who watched Ethan cross. Every glance, every whisper, carried meaning. In the Veyran Empire, power was measured not only by titles but by the ability to see threats before they struck. Ethan, a human from Earth, had suddenly become one such threat, or at least a curiosity no one could ignore. Ethan had barely slept since arriving at the palace. The comfort of his room was lost to his mind's constant turning. Assassins had almost killed the princess in the market. If one group could try once, others could attempt again. He needed to understand the palace, its people, and its secrets. Fast. Lysera arrived in his chamber unannounced. Her steps were soft but commanding. She wore her usual violet robes, flowing and elegant, yet practical enough to move quickly if danger appeared. "Ethan," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "I wanted to check on you. Are you ready for today?" Ethan rubbed his eyes. "Ready? I'm not even sure I belong here." Lysera's eyes narrowed slightly. "You belong wherever courage is needed. That is what you showed yesterday. But the palace, the court, they are not so simple. Many will not welcome you. Some may even wish to see you fail." He sighed. "Great, so I'm a target. Typical human adventure, right?" Lysera allowed herself a small smile. "Perhaps. But you are not just any human. You are the one who stood between death and the Heiress. That counts for more than you realize." The central hall was alive with whispers and cautious gazes as Ethan followed Lysera. Noble aliens surrounded the room, their faces painted with curiosity, suspicion, and in some cases, disdain. Their robes were intricate, each pattern signaling rank, achievement, and wealth. Weapons were often hidden beneath the folds of fabric, ready for subtle strikes. Here, a misplaced word could cost a life. The queen sat on her throne, observing every detail. She leaned forward slightly as Ethan approached, her eyes calculating. "Human," she said, her voice echoing through the hall. "The court wishes to understand why you would risk your life for my daughter. Do you understand that many here will see your actions as reckless, even dangerous?" Ethan straightened, meeting her gaze without flinching. "I acted because it was right. Because she was in danger. That's all. I didn't consider reward or recognition." A murmur ran through the assembly. Some nobles shook their heads in disbelief. Humans were supposedly weak, untrained, and impulsive. Yet here one stood, defying expectation with honesty and courage. The queen nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. "Honesty and courage are rare. Instinct is rarer still. You are an unusual human. That may be why my daughter trusts you. But the court may not." Lysera stepped forward and touched Ethan's arm lightly. "He is under my protection now," she said firmly. "None may harm him." The nobles exchanged uneasy glances. A human under the protection of the princess was unprecedented. Some clenched their fists. Others whispered in quiet shock. The court had never seen a human rise so quickly in influence, and fear spread faster than any word of praise. That evening, Ethan began noticing subtle signs of palace intrigue. In the hallways, he caught glimpses of conversations ending abruptly when he approached. Servants and attendants whispered quickly and looked away. Even some guards who had seemed friendly now glanced at him with suspicion. There was a pattern, and Ethan's mind, trained in engineering and logic, began piecing it together. He found a quiet corner of the palace library, scanning scrolls and data tablets. Historical records detailed past attempts to undermine the royal family, assassination plots, and secret factions that had existed for centuries. It became clear, the attack in the market was only a hint. More enemies lurked, waiting for another opportunity. The palace was not just a home. It was a battlefield masked by elegance. Late that night, Ethan heard movement outside his chamber. Shadows flitted across the walls. He grabbed a metal rod from the side of his bed, a simple tool he had used for repairs, now ready as a weapon. The door creaked and a figure slipped inside. "Who's there?" Ethan demanded. His voice was steady despite the adrenaline pumping through him. The figure froze, then stepped forward. A young servant, pale and trembling, raised their hands. "I mean no harm," the servant whispered. "I bring a message. You are being watched, more than you know." "Not all are loyal to the queen or Princess Lysera." Ethan's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" There are those who want to remove you from the palace. They see you as a threat. You are clever, human. But cleverness can be dangerous here. Ethan considered this. Humans were often underestimated, but that was a strength. He had survived worse than whispers. He nodded. I understand. Tell me everything you know. The servant hesitated, then handed him a small data chip. This contains movement patterns, patrols, and a list of those who have been unusually curious about you. Be careful. With that, the servant slipped back into the shadows. The next day, Ethan walked with Lysera through the palace gardens. The gardens were vast, filled with alien plants that shimmered under twin suns and water features that sang like crystal streams. Yet even in such beauty, the tension of the court remained. Guards lingered near corners, and noble visitors sometimes watched Ethan closely, trying to read him. Lysera spoke softly. You see now why I said the palace is dangerous. Even those who appear kind may have hidden agendas. Trust is rare even within the royal family. Ethan nodded. I can see that. But I also see people who can be loyal, even small acts. Like yours, he gestured to her. You stood by me yesterday. That counts for something. Lysera's eyes softened. Perhaps. But I have learned that in the Veyran court, appearances can be deceiving. Loyalty is often tested by fire, not words. Ethan smiled faintly. Then let's hope the next fire is manageable. Later, Ethan began observing the palace more closely. He noticed that certain doors always opened at specific times, that guards shifted posts with suspicious frequency, and that some attendants lingered near rooms he had never entered. Using his engineering mindset, he began tracking these patterns, connecting them like wires in a circuit. He realized that the market attack had likely been orchestrated by a faction within the palace itself. Someone powerful wanted Lysera and possibly the queen distracted or weakened. The assassination had been bold, but it was only the beginning. Ethan shared his observations with Lysera in private. They are planning something bigger. The attack was just a test, or a distraction. We need to watch the court closely. Lysera frowned. You see things others do not. That is unusual for a human. I've had to survive in strange places my whole life, Ethan replied. Patterns matter. Instinct isn't enough. Lysera's lips curved in a small smile. Then perhaps you were meant to be here. Not just by chance, but because you can see what others cannot. By the end of the day, Ethan felt a strange mix of pride and caution. He had saved Lysera, gained the queen's interest, and already begun uncovering plots within the palace. Yet he knew the court was a dangerous game, and one wrong move could cost him more than just reputation. It could cost his life. For the first time, Ethan Cross realized that being human in this galaxy was both a gift and a challenge. He had courage, quick thinking, and an instinct for survival that others underestimated. But he was also an outsider, surrounded by centuries of tradition, power struggles, and secrets that moved like shadows. And the shadows were watching him. The grand hall of Queen Serenia's palace was silent, save for the faint hum of the crystalline walls. Light from the twin suns outside streamed through enormous windows, reflecting off the polished floors and casting long dancing shadows. Today, the court had gathered for an unusual session. The queen had summoned Ethan Cross, the human who had saved her daughter, to speak before the full assembly. Ethan walked with careful steps beside Lysera. His arm, still wrapped in the glowing bandage from his earlier wounds, throbbed slightly. He ignored it. Today was not about pain, it was about survival, understanding, and perhaps something larger than either. The court was vast, filled with hundreds of alien nobles, each adorned in intricate robes and insignias of rank. Many whispered among themselves as Ethan entered, their faces a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and in some cases disdain. He had noticed this before, but today it was more intense. A human standing near the heiress of the Veyran Empire was unprecedented. The queen sat on her throne, elevated above all, her posture perfect, her gaze sharp as a blade. She did not speak immediately. Instead, she observed Ethan, letting the weight of her stare press on him like gravity. Finally, she spoke. Human, you have acted in ways few of your kind ever could. You put yourself in danger to save my daughter. You did so without thought of reward, without regard for your own safety. Her voice was calm, yet carried an authority that made even the most seasoned nobles uneasy. Ethan straightened, meeting her gaze. I acted because it was the right thing to do. That's all. A ripple ran through the court. Some gasped at his audacity. Others murmured in disbelief. Many could not understand why a human would risk himself for someone so far above him in power and rank. The queen's eyes narrowed slightly, studying him. "Interesting," she murmured, almost to herself. Then her gaze swept over the assembly. "You see this human?" she said, her voice echoing. "Not as a simple protector, no." The palace of Queen Serenia had never felt so tense. Even the glowing halls and shimmering floors seemed darker, as if the shadows themselves were watching. Ethan Cross moved carefully through the corridors beside Lysera. Each step reminded him that the palace was no longer just a home for royalty. It was a battlefield, and the next attack could come at any moment. Intelligence gathered over the past days confirmed his fears. Factions within the court were conspiring, emboldened by the failed assassination attempts. But what troubled him most was that these were not just political rivals. They were experienced killers, trained in the arts of stealth and deception. "We need to prepare," Ethan said quietly as they walked past a series of tall, glowing pillars. "If they strike again, it won't just be a test. It will be war," Lysera nodded. "I know, but the queen must remain safe, and my position is delicate. The court cannot see me acting openly against them without evidence." Ethan's jaw tightened. Humans often had to act quickly, decisively, and without ceremony. "Then we will prepare quietly. Train the guards, reinforce key positions, and make sure the palace itself is ready to defend against anything." The first step was to strengthen the palace defenses. Ethan worked with the palace engineers, quickly learning how the Veyran security systems operated. Energy barriers could be shifted to block hallways. Surveillance devices were scattered throughout the palace, monitoring every movement, and hidden chambers could be used as traps for intruders. But he noticed something important. The Veyran guards relied too heavily on tradition and protocol. They followed routines that could be predicted. Ethan introduced subtle changes, patrols that shifted randomly, decoy positions, and communication signals that only he and trusted guards could understand. "Your methods are unusual," one guard admitted, watching Ethan adjust a series of energy barriers. "No human has ever done this before." "Then let's hope the assassins have never met a human either," Ethan replied with a wry smile. Days passed and tensions rose. The court whispered constantly, sending spies to observe Ethan's movements, yet none could predict how he prepared the palace. Even Lysera noticed his unusual approach. "You don't just rely on strength," she said, watching him train the guards in human tactics. "You anticipate, plan, and adapt," Ethan paused. "That's how humans survive. We don't have the numbers or the titles others do, so we have to be smart." Lysera's gaze softened. "It is remarkable and frightening to think a human could outthink generations of Veyran nobles." Ethan shrugged. "I'm not out to frighten anyone. I just want to keep you and the queen safe." The first attack came on a quiet night. The palace lay under the twin moons, its halls silent except for the soft hum of protective systems. Ethan had stationed himself in the central command room, monitors glowing softly around him. Guards moved silently through the corridors, ready to intercept any intruder. Then the alarm sounded. A section of the eastern wall, usually quiet, had been breached. Ethan's eyes scanned the monitors. 3 masked figures slipped through, armed with plasma rifles and blades. "Move," he ordered. "Block the main corridors. Do not engage until I signal." The guards hesitated, unsure of the new tactics, but Ethan's calm authority gave them courage. They moved as he instructed, cutting off the intruders' paths. Ethan grabbed a control panel and activated a series of energy traps. The floor beneath one of the attackers shifted, pinning him temporarily. Another attacker stumbled into a corridor blocked by invisible energy barriers. Chaos erupted, but it was controlled chaos, just as Ethan had planned. Within minutes, the intruders were cornered. A few guards engaged directly, disarming them with precision. The remaining attackers tried to flee but were intercepted by hidden forces stationed around the palace. When the battle ended, only silence remained. The palace was intact. No one had been seriously hurt. Ethan wiped sweat from his brow, his heart still racing. Lysera approached, her expression a mix of relief and awe. "You did this," she said quietly. "All of it." "With just your mind and human tactics," Ethan shook his head. "It wasn't just me. The guards followed my lead. They trusted me, and that made the difference." Word of the attack spread quickly. Even the queen learned of it almost immediately. Serenia summoned Ethan to her private chambers. You have done well, the queen said, her eyes sharp and assessing. Not only did you protect my daughter, but you also turned what could have been chaos into a controlled defense. Humans may be small in number, but you demonstrate qualities many Varen nobles lack. Ethan bowed slightly. Thank you, Your Majesty. I just did what needed to be done. Serenia leaned forward, her gaze fixed. What you have done changes the perception of humanity in this empire. You are no longer merely a visitor. You are a participant, and with that comes responsibility. You will continue to protect Lizera. You will continue to observe the court, and you will continue to act where others hesitate. Ethan nodded, understanding the weight of her words. Protecting the princess was no longer optional. It was duty. Over the following days, Ethan worked tirelessly. He trained the palace guards in human strategies, flanking maneuvers, silent communication, and rapid response tactics. He reinforced critical points of the palace and monitored the movements of nobles, watching for signs of betrayal. He began to notice patterns among the more ambitious courtiers. They whispered to each other, trying to plot, but their subtle actions revealed their intentions. Using these observations, Ethan set small traps, exposing some conspirators to the queen and giving her evidence to confront them. Lysera watched him work, impressed and quietly proud. You see things others cannot, she said one evening as they walked through the moonlit gardens. That is why the queen trusts you and why the court fears you. Ethan smiled faintly. Humans have survived worse. Out here in space in unknown worlds, we've learned to adapt. The palace is just another challenge. The next attack was larger and more coordinated. A faction of nobles had secretly hired mercenaries to strike during a ceremonial gathering. Ethan had anticipated the possibility. As the mercenaries approached, they were met with unexpected resistance. Corridors blocked, guards positioned strategically, and traps triggered at precise moments. Chaos ensued, but under Ethan's guidance, the palace defenders moved like a single, unstoppable force. The attackers were caught in a combination of energy barriers, tactical positioning, and clever human improvisation. Within an hour, the palace was secure. The mercenaries captured, the conspirators exposed, and the court stunned into silence. Lizera approached Ethan, her hand brushing against his arm. You have done more than protect me, she said softly. You have saved the palace, the queen, and our people. You are remarkable. Ethan shook his head. I just did what needed to be done. That's all any of us could do. By the end of the week, the court had been shaken. Nobles whispered nervously, wondering how a human could outthink and outmaneuver generations of Varen experience. The queen, however, remained calm. She observed Ethan closely, her expression unreadable. But even she could not hide a flicker of approval. Lysera, ever by his side, smiled faintly. The shadows in the court are still there, she said. But now they know you are not easily defeated. They will think twice before plotting again. Ethan looked around the palace halls, once familiar, now seeming more like a battlefield he had mastered. I've learned something, he said quietly. Humans are underestimated. And being underestimated can be an advantage. Lysera's eyes shone with admiration. It is more than that. You have earned respect, human. You have shown that courage, intelligence, and instinct can change even the strongest court. Perhaps the galaxy has never seen a human like you before. Ethan felt a strange mix of pride and humility. He had survived threats from the shadows, saved lives, and earned the trust of both the princess and the queen. Yet he knew this was only the beginning. The palace would always be a place of intrigue, and enemies would always test them. But for the first time, he felt confident. He had proven that humans could stand against even the most cunning opponents, using nothing but their wits, courage, and resolve. And when the next shadow came, he would be ready. The palace of Queen Serenia was unusually quiet that morning. The twin suns bathed the towering spires in warm light, but even the light could not hide the tension in the air. Ethan Cross walked through the grand corridors, his mind alert, his instincts sharp. The attacks had stopped for now, but he knew the court's shadows were never gone. They waited. They watched. Lysera walked beside him, her violet robes flowing like water. There was a calm in her steps, but Ethan could sense the weight of responsibility she carried. The palace had survived 2 coordinated attacks, exposed traitors, and endured weeks of whispered plotting. Yet the queen had called for a private audience today, signaling that something far more important was about to occur. They're still watching, Ethan murmured, even now. Lysera glanced at him, her expression serious but steady. Yes, but today is not about them. Today is about the choice the queen must make, and the future she envisions. The doors to the queen's private chambers opened with a soft hum. Ethan stepped inside, followed by Lysera. The room was vast, filled with glowing panels and soft crystal furniture, but all the beauty was overshadowed by the imposing figure of Queen Serenia herself. She sat in her throw,